You all know how much I love a good wreath DIY, and this one was inspired by a beautiful wreath that I saw in John Lewis, and it was filled with pine cones and succulents and eucalyptus. Like, what could be more amazing? But it was so expensive, and so I've decided to DIY my own version at a fraction of the cost. This is how it's turned out, and I think it looks absolutely beautiful, and here's how I made it. So the first thing you're going to need is a wreath base. I'm using this copper wire one, which I bought on eBay. I think this is the 10-inch version, and I'm going for a wire base because I want to be able to wire all of my items on, and when I'm finished I want to hide all the wire so the whole thing just looks like it's completely made out of eucalyptus, pine cones and succulents. This was super cheap. I think it was £3 or £4. So that's going to be my base, and then on top of that I'm going to be applying my fake foliage using garden wire. So I picked up this in Tesco's. It's really easy to bend. It's really easy to cut with scissors or snips. So I'm going to use that, and I'm also going to use a thinner type of wire as well, which you'll see later in the DIY. So for foliage wise, I want some fir foliage on there, as in, Christmas tree. And I picked up this sprig of faux Christmas tree from TK Maxx or Homesense, I think it was. And this was £2.99. It's already a bit sparkly and got pine cones on there. So I'm going to use one of those. I'm also going to use some fake succulents, which I found in Dunelm. So I found this bunch of fake succulents. Fake succulents are quite pricey, but this little bunch of 3 was £7, and I'm going to use all 3 of them. They're quite nice and large. And I also have a couple of fake succulents left from another set that I bought from Dunelm a long time ago for another DIY, and I'm going to add those into the mix as well. Then I'm going to use some fake eucalyptus. Again, this is from Dunelm. I think it was £2.49, and I'm only going to need 1 sprig for the whole wreath, so that keeps it nice and cheap. This is really nice stuff. It's got that nice muted green colour to it. And then I'm also going to add in some pine cones, and I actually found my pine cones in a local park. Back when I lived in my old house there was loads, and so I collected a huge big bag of them last year. I've still not worked my way through all of them, but if you don't have any trees near you, you can buy them from craft shops and in the Christmas decoration section. So you're going to need a pair of snips and a pair of scissors for chopping up the wire. And to give the whole thing a snowy look, I'm actually going to use some snow spray, which I bought on eBay, but you could also use a little bit of white spray paint if you wanted, or you could spray some spray adhesive and then sprinkle it with white glitter, which would also look really nice. So the first thing we're going to do is use the snips to cut off the sprigs of fir off the branch. My snips were absolutely rubbish and not very sharp, so I had to do a combination of snipping and bending until the wire broke. But essentially what you want to do is take all the little sprigs off the branch, and also the pine cones are only wired on, so I twisted all of them off as well because I'm actually going to utilise them in my wreath. So to start my wreath, the first thing I'm going to do is lay out the larger sprigs of fir and work out where I want them to be and sort of decide what's going to be the top of my wreath. So I'm going to place one of the little rods at the top just because that will help later when I've got to attach the wire to hang it. I'm going to treat it a bit like a clock face, I suppose, and I'm going to lay the sprigs of fir on there and work out which direction I want them to point in, and also decide, am I going to go all in one direction? Am I going to point everything up towards the top, or am I going to do it sort of hodgepodge? It is completely up to you. I had a bit of a play around and decided where I wanted mine, and then I started to wire them on. So to start going with the wiring, I'm just going to remove all the pieces and just start with one piece of fir. I'm going to get my wire and cut myself off a length, maybe, I don't know, it's only approximate like 20 centimetres or something. You'll know once you start going, and you can always chop off the excess. So the first thing I'm going to do is create an anchor. So I'm going to utilise this little crossbar because that will stop it from slipping. And I'm just going to wrap the wire around, intertwine it, make a little twist, and just make sure it's on there really tight, and that's a really, really good anchor point to start then attaching my first sprig. And to attach the sprig, all I'm going to do is wrap the wire around the bottom, and then also wrap the wire around the middle, and then twist it and tie it off into a knot and cut off the excess. And that's the sprig on, really. It's as simple as that. And then because the sprig is wire based, you can twist them and manipulate them to be in the position that you want. And I'm going to repeat that with the other 3 sprigs. It's important to get these on nice and tight, and I'm using the thicker wire because this is going to form the base of the whole wreath really. Later on when we add the smaller bits, I am going to use the thinner wire. So once I've attached the 4 double sprigs onto the wreath base, I'm actually just going to add in a couple of little single sprigs just into a couple of the gaps, and I'm actually just going to poke these into the existing wire and see if that holds it on well enough, and if it doesn't, I'll add a little bit of extra wire just to keep it in place. I'm going to start adding my eucalyptus sprigs, so I'm just going to snip off the lengths using scissors or snips. I needed snips because it was actually surprisingly thick. And once you've chopped off all the lengths, we can then start arranging them. So again, I had a little bit of a play around about where I might want them to sit before I started wiring them on. And as I said, because this stuff is a little bit more delicate and I didn't want the wire to be seen, I did actually move on to a much thinner wire. So I'm just going to work my way round, add in sprigs of the eucalyptus onto the wreath base and then wiring them into place. Some of them I put underneath the fir, so I actually bent the fir up and sat the eucalyptus underneath so the whole thing looks intertwined. And the most important thing as you work around the wreath is to constantly put it back up to where the top of your wreath is going to be, so you can make sure that when it's hung it has a shape that you like, if that makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to attach my succulents now because these are like pretty big elements to the wreath and I've only got 3, so I need to work out where these are going to sit. And to attach them, I'm actually just going to take them off their stalks. So I'm just going to either pull them off or bend them off of their big wire, and I'm going to add my own wire that will be easier to attach. So to do that, I'm going to get a length of the thicker garden wire and I'm actually going to feed it around the succulent underneath the leaves, the whole way round. We call them leaves? Yeah, we'll call them leaves. Underneath the leaves, the whole way round, just the first layer of leaves, and then I'm going to pull it tight. And then I'm just going to put a couple of twists into the wire, snip off the ends so that there's some excess but that they're the same length, and put it to one side, and that's ready to attach. And I'm going to do that to all 3 succulents. I'm going to start arranging my succulents now and decide where I want them at the wreath. Again, I've made sure that the top of my wreath is at 12 o'clock, that it's, where it will be when it's hung. And I'm just going to pop them on there and just see where I think that they'll look nice. Because I've only got 3, I'm going to do them slightly off, off centre. And I'm also going to be adding in the smaller ones later. So I had a little bit of a play with those just to see how those looked, but not going to add those on until after I've done my pine cones. So once I've got an arrangement that I'm happy with, I'm then going to utilise the wire ends on my big succulents to attach them to my wreath, and I'm going to go the whole way round the wire wreath, wrap it round, do a good couple of twists to make sure that they're on there properly. Once all 3 succulents are on, I'm going to move on to pine cones, and I'm going to attach these using wire in a similar way to how I put the wire on the succulents. You wrap the wire around the bottom of the pine cone so you kind of get it within the frondrels. What do we call these things on a pine cone? I have no idea. Anyway, I'm going to do that to all of my pine cones so they're all ready to attach. And once all the pine cones have got their wire on, I'm going to spray them with my snow spray. So I've popped them onto some plastic, give the can a good shake, and then give them all an even coating of snow spray to give them that kind of frosty look. And then put them to one side to dry. So I went off and had a cup of tea while they dried. I also gave the pine cones that I took off the first sprig, I gave them a bit of a spray of snow spray as well so that I could add them back into the wreath. Then once again, I had a bit of a play around and arranged them to work out where I might like to wire them onto before I wired them. It's always good to have a little bit of a play around and see what's going to look right before you do anything. And then once I've worked out where I want to put them all, I just wire them on using the wire that I've attached. You can wire onto just one of the poles, or you can wire across both of them to make them on there a bit stronger. I'm going to use my glue gun just to sort of position everything definitely later. But if you haven't got a glue gun, I would suggest just going a little bit more overboard with wiring. So yeah, just work your way around, place your pine cones, put them at different angles. You can put a big one and a little one next to each other to add a little cluster, and I just worked my whole way around the wreath. I also decided to add even more pine cones. I had more in a bag which were already sort of pre-sprayed a little bit white, had some medium-sized ones and then some little ones as well. So I decided to wire all of these onto my wreath because I wanted it to be really, really full, and actually the John Lewis one had a lot of pine cones on it. So then I decided to add on the fake succulents. So these are the little fake succulents that I'd already pre-wired. So I dotted them around the wreath as well. And as I said before, I kept turning it the right way up so that I could check that it was the way I wanted it to be. Okay, so it's looking lovely and full now. So basically I'm just going to work my way around, fill in any gaps like I was doing before with little bits of eucalyptus or little bits of fir that are left over. And I'm either going to use my glue gun to put these in, or I'm going to use a little bit of wire. And essentially I just want the whole thing to have no gaps, and I don't want to be able to see the wire frame at all. And I'm just going to work my way around and sort of zhuzh it. And it takes a little bit of time this to get it right, and I keep putting it back up to the top to see what it looks like when it's hung the right way up. But it is worth this sort of last little push. You can trim the fir down to fit your gaps, and you can also, trim the leaves off your eucalyptus or just pull off individual leaves and just glue them in. Or as I said before, if you don't have a glue gun, you can just use wire, or you could just use normal glue. That would work as well. It just takes a little bit longer to set. And that's it, all done, all finished. I've given it a very light spray of the snow spray just to make it look really festive and snowy. And I'm now going to thread some of the really, really thin wire just down the back of the wreath frame, just so that I can hang it. You could use ribbon if you wanted to be able to see it. A cream ribbon or black or any colour really would look lovely. But I want mine to sort of hang invisibly, as it were. So I'm just going to use some of that really, really thin wire so I can wire it onto this little nail that I've got on my front door. But I'm just going to attach that. You could tie on the ribbon in the same place onto the frame where it's nice and strong, tie it in a nice bow or something, and then yeah, it's ready to hang. And there we go, all done. I've just hung it inside just to show you guys, but obviously I'm going to hang it on my front door with pride. I think it looks absolutely beautiful. I'm so pleased with how it's turned out. And what's even better is the John Lewis one was £45 to buy, and I've made this one for around about £20, including all the succulents and the foliage and the frame itself. So I'm really, really pleased with that. I hope you guys like it, and I hope that you've enjoyed today's DIY video. I would love to know if you're going to give it a go. Please do comment and let me know. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe obviously, and I will see you again next time. Bye.